intersex is another interesting. Um, so someone is saying, "Is this will this be live on YouTube?" Yes, they don't worry, they're not going to shut us down. Okay, but it's just like we need to talk, and we're not at this point. We're not even that large for them to come and look. But again, this is supposed to be a safe conversation. All right, we'll just speak the truth, but I want it to still be said. So plus basically means any other thing. That means they're basically opening the door to anything. And when you open the door to anything, like life teaches us a very strong lesson that the moment barriers or boundaries are broken, anything is possible, right? Anything is possible. So how did we get to this point where at a time in science, what was taught was man and woman, right? Male and female. That's what you learned in school, hopefully. But now, especially in many schools in the US now and in Canada, there is the indoctrination that is not just true. Like science is not necessarily as accurate as it should be anymore because why just two? And so they've moved that border and brought a lot of ideas by doing that. And so I want to just kind of give us a little bit of a and if Praise is able to, share some things as I speak, that's great. But I just have some slides that will show. But if just we just keep talking, Sha, as it comes in. Um, let's talk about what gender identity is, right? What is gender identity? The only way to really understand gender identity, first of all, is to understand that what led to this in the first place was the creation of a distinction between sex and gender. Prior to today, prior to this time that we're in, are you still able to hear me? I want to be sure that my audio is good enough.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Prior to the time that we are now, gender was synonymous with sex. In fact, many of us we still think and understand it that way. So if I say, what is your gender? You're not thinking anything beyond male and female. Am I correct? And so that is how it has always been processed and understood. But over time, through the course of many years, and I'll tell you some of the historical things that happened in the 1960s, 1970s that brought a new turn to this ideology, they started to divide the concept between, separate the idea of sex from gender. So according to them, they would say sex is what you are biologically assigned at birth. So when you are born, what is in between your legs, that is your biological sex. Okay. Now they will go ahead to say, while sex is in a sense fixed, gender is not fixed. And so you hear things like gender fluidity. All right. You hear things like gender dysphoria, gender questioning. You see a lot of terminologies around that because while sex is fixed, because of course God created all of us and he made them male and female, the Bible clearly says. But there is just this move to, and I'll tell you a little bit about the shady history of this movement, but just the idea that we want to be God to ourselves, we want to redefine how things operate. We're going to open up the definition of gender. And so gender is now going to be what I feel like, what I identify as, what I'm more inclined to be, rather than what I'm defined to be by birth. Does everyone understand what I've said so far?
Yes,
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So now, you're hearing things like cisgender. How many of you even know what cisgender is? Like, it's something that should not even be a conversation, but over time, indoctrination is such a powerful thing that if something has been said over and over again and given some semblance of scientific realism, it will be accepted. That's what we've seen over the years, right? So you hear things like, oh, I'm non-binary, I'm gender fluid, meaning I can be this today or that tomorrow. I don't know if many of you have followed people like Demi Lovato, who was my childhood crush, by the way. I used to watch Disney Channel when I was growing up, and Demi Lovato was like the star. She was on. Who can tell me some of the things she was on? Um,
Sunny with
she
the
was
chance.
Sunny with a Chance, Camp Rock. Thank you. You know, she was super popular back then, and everyone was just like, "Oh, Demi Lovato, she can sing, she's fine." And so, as a young boy, I really just had a crush on this lady. And many years after, I, like I was just checking in with all the Disney stars back then. I was like, where are they? What are they now doing? And oh my gosh, I started hearing things like at first she was confused. That's where it all started from. Demi Lovato was confused. Then it became, what's it called? She said she started feeling like she was queer, right? Um, and then it just became a whole lot of things. So she came out as non-binary. That was like I think 2021. She was like, I'm non-binary. And then we that's where we start hearing things like pronouns, right? This was something that was already popular at the time. And she, after being non-binary, she switched back again and said she's going back to her she her pronouns. And then because she was so confused, she grew tired of having to explain herself and her gender identity. So what you see a lot of the time is people struggling with their identity, and hopefully over time as we talk on this subject, I'll show you why it's the case. Like I don't doubt that there's anyone here who at some point has either struggled with same-sex attraction or maybe just discomfort in your skin. That is one of the frailties of the human condition. We were born into sin, and I don't want to go into the theological aspects today, but everyone who feels something about, oh, I don't like the way I look, or you feel uncomfortable, or you feel doubtful of yourself, that is not supposed to be pushed further to mean that you're in the wrong body, or that somehow whatever created you made a mistake and put a woman essence into a male body. That's what a lot of people are kind of communicating with the subject of gender. So again, sex is biological, and they define gender as something that is socially defined. How do I feel at this moment? What fits me as I am at the moment? So that's the distinction you have to understand. So you understand why this can go as far as possible, right? You can have LGBTQIA plus. You can have anything, because I can feel like a chair tomorrow, and according to this principle, if I feel like a chair tomorrow, I should be able to identify as a chair if it gives me some benefit of some kind, because ultimately it's the benefit that it provides that matters. They're not just trying to switch to another body or to another identity for the sake of it. There's something at the end of it, right? It is either they want comfort, it's either they want to be accepted by people, all right? And so it's very, very, very important. We're seeing a lot of changes um in our day, because the conversations around this subject are just getting worse and worse. So let's kind of just talk a little bit about the history. Like I said, the history of this, it was gender identity as a concept has always been hinted at for a very long time, but it became popularized by someone called John Money. How many of us have heard that name, John Money? John is John, and then Money, Money. So I'm going to tell you a story real quick, just so you understand how deep and perverse this thing is. There's a whole video on it that we'll share with you just to save time, and you can watch it on your own. But I want everyone to be educated on this subject. I want you to be very educated on this. So when you have conversations with people, you extend in an arm of grace, but with another arm of truth. You must never compromise. And we're in an age where even non-Christians are seeing how dangerous this ideology is, and they are fighting for their children, fighting for a space to make it clear that we're not going to let our kids be indoctrinated. We're not going to buy into this idea. But it started with a guy, or became popularized with a guy called John Money. Now, John Money was a scientist he worked at John Hopkins University, and he was the one that formed the idea of gender role. In fact, his communication, what he was teaching, right, was I want to prove, he had no proof, but he wanted to prove that gender is malleable. It's a construct that I can decide what gender I want to be. I may be male, I may have a penis, but I want to be a woman. And that was something that he had in his mind. And he wanted to prove it, but he didn't have any way or scientific method to present it, right? So, you know what I want us to do? I think it would be helpful. I want us to just play that video. Can we play the first video? Because this was a conversation between um my very good friend. On one day we'll be sitting side by side or opposite each other. Some of you know my friend JP Jordan Peterson, right? I met him before, but we haven't like spoken or anything. But he had an interview with a lady who is it was a very, very, very enlightening interview they had, where he was talking about the history of the gender conversation, and John Money came up, and it was a very, very sad story. It's the story about the Reina family, okay, and I don't know if anyone, Vicky, are you able to share that? If we can watch that video, if we can watch
Okay,
that
the
video,
one with Jordan Peterson.
yes, I want us to watch it and just maybe speed it up by
Just give me a
two,
minute.
not times two, maybe by 1 point.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
All right, while she's working on that, any comments, questions? Do you get it so far? Because we're just building foundations here. All right.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Theory.
Can you hear anything?
How many minutes is it?
He didn't have any way of proving it.
You said
How many minutes is this?
it's 19 minutes. I can
It's perfect. So, you know what? I want people to really just pay attention. If this is what we watch and we make some comments on it for today, that's perfect because it covers a lot of the lies behind this gender movement. So, what you're going to watch in the next few minutes is this conversation talking about John Money and how he conducted an experiment with vulnerable people, a vulnerable family, and eventually we see the result of that. So pay attention to this, and we'll have a conversation and end up today. All right. So go ahead.
But you heard the sound, right?
Yes, sound is good. Sound is good. Go ahead. I might be indisposed for a
He
short
had
moment.
his theory,
Go ahead.
and he didn't have any way of proving it because, I mean, how do you prove something like that? Until this family showed up at his doorstep, and it was a Canadian family from Winnipeg, I think, right?
I think that's
Yeah.
right. Yep.
Yeah. And they were the Reamer family, a blue collar, very young couple, 20, 21 years old. And they had a horrific tragedy in their family, which is that they gave birth to twin boys. The boys were fine. And when the boys were, well, actually, they had phimosis. Phimosis is a abnormality of the opening of the urethra. And so the doctors recommended circumcision for the boys. And they went in when they were 8 months old for circumcision. And the first boy to go in for the circumcision was Bruce. And the equipment, there was a malfunction of the equipment. And they were cauterizing the penis in order to circumcise it. And instead of just that small amount of tissue that was supposed to be cauterized, apparently the settings were incorrect, and the entire penis was burnt. So Bruce's penis was burnt, beyond any functionality. So these poor parents went home, The other boy was not circumcised, just obviously. They went home, and what are they supposed to do? They have a boy without a penis. What the hell are they supposed to do? So months later, they were watching television, and John Money happened to be on there. And you have to know also that John Money was an extremely pompous, self-assured individual. He was sophisticated. When he talked, you listened. He came across as being definitive, being, calling the shots, knowing what was going on, knowing the research, knowing the truth. And he in this interview on television said that a boy can be raised as a girl and a girl can be raised as a boy if it's done early enough. And that early enough means before the age of 2.5 or 3. And the parents, the Reamer parents, immediately took note of that, and they thought, here's the answer. This is the answer for Bruce. This is what we're supposed to do. So they contacted Dr. Money down in Baltimore, and they made an appointment and took the twins down to Baltimore and went down there. Again, you have to understand that this was a uneducated, young blue-collar family. And when they were interviewed later about their meetings with John Money, they described him as like, we just thought he was God. Mm-hmm. We just thought, he's a professor, and he's, got all the diplomas, and he's the head of this entire
new
clinic. At an outstanding university, one of the major universities in the world.
That was at Johns Hopkins, right?
Yes,
yeah, right.
Yes. So you have to imagine this young couple coming, and they're at a loss, and they are looking for an answer. They've been praying. They're looking for an answer to their prayers. What are we going to do with Bruce? And John Money says, well, we have an answer for you, because male and female is actually not related to chromosomes. It's not related to hormones. It's not innate. We can take little Bruce, and we have to do some surgery on Bruce. We have to castrate him, and we'll remove his testicles. He already didn't have a penis. We're going to remove his testicles. We're going to fashion, some sort of elementary sort of female genitalia. You're going to give him a girl's name, and you're going to put him in pink dresses and give him dolls and raise him as a girl. And you are never, ever, Dr. Money told the parents, never to tell him that this was truly what happened and after he was born. Never tell him, because that will ruin everything. And it's up to you. You have to just work your hardest to raise him as a girl and make sure that everyone around him is considering him a girl, because essentially he is a girl. And so not only was this the answer to the Reamers' prayers, this was, as you can understand now, the answer to Dr. Money's prayers.
Right. He had an experiment.
This was the experiment. This was his proof of concept. His concept was that being male and female is completely separate from biology. It's imposed by society. It's a social construct.
Can you pause?
And this is proof of concept. And so the Reamers.
Thank you. So, sorry, can you still see me? I just had to find a quiet place. So, you see, this is troubling, isn't it? It's the idea that he had a proof of concept. He had an idea in his mind, and he wanted to pass that message across. But he didn't have any tools to do that. And here comes this family, and it just fits that theory that he's trying to purport. And so he starts this whole series of tests that you're going to hear about. But I wanted to pause and just let you realize how an idea is formed and how an idea is pushed. These people, especially John Money, and there are many of them that are part of this movement, the main goal was to eradicate the distinction between male and female. That's always been the goal. In fact, if you look back at the early feminist movements, at the very beginning, it was not just to empower women. If you look closely at the core of it, it was to eradicate the distinction between men and women. And while it's good in an area of like equity, like, hey, men should make more, should make the same amount that women make, or just equity of opportunities, which I should fight for and every believer should fight for. But the idea is that, it's no longer just equity. It is, let's remove the distinctives that God has created. That's dangerous. And that's what we're seeing in this. So just I've paused it now, but I want to be able to get an interaction. That's why we paused it for a little bit. Does anyone have any comments? Some of you, is this the first time you're hearing about this whole thing? Maybe you just thought, a lot of us are already we're buying into the idea that, oh, this thing is we're just getting to catch on to what has always been, because that's the narrative. You hear a lot of people saying things like, oh, it didn't just start today, it started long ago. And so because it started very long ago, that's always been the path. We're just rediscovering it. But if you realize what's going on, it is people who had a vendetta, or a theory, or some kind of goal. For example, how many of you have heard of, I've forgotten the name. Oh dear Lord, there's this woman that became popular for the theory of killing the weaker ones so that the society will have the strongest ones alive. Eugenics. I think that's the study. Eugenics. Let me search it real quick. Yeah, listen to this. Eugenics is a set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human population. Now, the people who started that eugenics ultimately wanted to reduce the number of people that are on the planet. They felt like the earth is congested. And so, who are the weaker ones? So we can eradicate them. That's what that was the idea of someone that now led to a lot of things, that the atrocities that we see today in the. So you have to understand that with every move like this, there is a force and a spirit behind it. It's not just something that just happened. There are people bankrolling ideas. Like John Money was bent on pushing his ideology and finally found something he can use to make it work. Now let's see how the story continues, because it gets a little troubling. What you can do for me is increase the can you increase the the speed a little bit? But while you're preparing for that,
does anyone well, he had his surgery.
Does anyone have any comments so far?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I wanted to hopefully we get there, but then it does not apply, or it does not cater to the set of people that they feel what they feel. How can we, how does this get to them? Do you get how we're talking from the side of, oh, this person imposed, but of those people that they weren't imposed on. Exactly.
Yeah. Now that's a good question. I think we're definitely getting there. What we're focusing on is, how is this ideology fully coming to acceptance today? It's not by accident. That's what we're trying to talk about. We're talking about the ideology. We're going to go back and discuss the actual realities, because like I said, there's every likelihood that on this call, someone has or is struggling with same-sex attraction. And just like every other struggle, it almost seems like it is your default. You cannot control it. And we're going to look at what God's word actually says about it. The fact that all of us, regardless of what we feel, whether it is an area we struggle in or not, that we have the same out. And the same out is not a temporary fix. It's the fact that we will be changed, right? Until the time we are changed, we have a responsibility to bow the knee to God, bow the knee to his way, right? So we're going to talk more about it, because for some of us, it hits home. For some of you, this may just be like, why is Pastor Ernest talking about this subject? But I tell you, being educated on the history, the background, the origins, the foundations, what has pushed this idea even further helps us with perspective, so that we know that there's a war. All right, there's a war. There's an external war and there's an internal war. All right. So yeah, I wanna see what people are saying in the chat real quick. But Simi, I'm with you, and that's why it's a whole month, right? So this is not where every conversation will be handled, but I do want to make sure that we are addressing all the different aspects of this. Okay, insane. So yeah, let's not talk about eugenics for now. Let's come back to the context of our meeting today. So let's go ahead, just play. I want you to see the end of this story, and then we'll move
They
forward.
took him home. They named Bruce Brenda. They put him in all the girls' clothing, and they gave him dolls, and they did all the things. And he peed sitting down sometimes, because as we'll learn later, he actually preferred urinating standing up, which is astonishing. We learned later that he always wanted to urinate standing up. And from the time he was in diapers, I think, he was told he was a girl. So that really is fascinating. But anyway, so they took him home, raised him as a girl, and Dr. Money started to follow the twins. Every year they would come down for a visit. The parents would spend time speaking to Dr. Money, and then the money, here's a slip.
Freudian slip for you.
Yeah. Dr. Money would take the twins without the parents into his office and spend time with the twins. So this went on for years. And Dr. Money began to report on his study that became a famous landmark study. And he called her Joan in his study. He was beginning to write about this and lecture. And he was claiming that Joan, AKA Brenda, AKA Bruce, was doing great. I mean, she was adjusting. She may be a bit of a tomboy. He would acknowledge that. But in every way, she was adjusting, and she was doing well with friends and with schools, and she liked playing with dolls, and she would mimic her mom. And he was giving this glowing report from year to year. And in his professional writing of his studies, his report, and he was giving talks, and he was getting, you might imagine, tremendous attention for this. I mean, you have to understand, this was by now maybe, the early 60s. This is feminism, okay? This is the sexual revolution. This is a time when society, or at least part of society, wanted nothing more to say that male and female is a social construct. And that in order to gain, full equality, women have to be considered the same as men. And, to have a study such as this study of John Money's, in which he was reporting that this baby who was XY, normal chromosomes, normal everything biologically, but is being successfully raised as a girl because he has a girl's name and girls and dresses and dolls and all, his entire society, his teachers and his grandparents and everyone is reinforcing the idea that he's a delicate girl who likes to cook and, is going to grow up to have babies. I mean, this was huge. Now, what happened is that this theory of John Money's was accepted over the decades. We didn't find out what really happened with the twins until decades later, And in the meantime, during those decades, his theory became doctrine. Okay, his theory became just baked into, so many fields of both soft and hard science, so that it was standard that whenever you had, for example, an XY or any child that had ambiguous genitalia, if they could be raised as a girl, they'd be raised as a girl. So they'd be castrated just automatically. Why? Because of the great success, because of what John Money proved to us. And so lots and lots of boys all over the world. I mean, this was written into the textbooks of endocrinology and the textbooks of genetics. I mean, this became truth, so to speak. Not that there weren't people, other scientists that were standing up and saying, John, this isn't proven yet. Let's look a little closer. This is not necessarily the case. But what did he do? He wouldn't tolerate that. John Money, was a tyrant. He would not tolerate another psychologist or biologist or geneticist standing up and trying to publish something that would challenge his great gender theory. He would arrange, he would intimidate the editors at the scientific journals to not publish those articles. It's a lot of what's actually going on right now is very similar.
Right.
So,
right.
So what happened with the twins is that after decades, in fact, John Money wrote a book in 1997 in which he said yet again that his twin study, that his gender theory had been confirmed and supported by the results of this experiment with the twins. And the following
one person experiment, by the way, a one person experiment.
Yeah, but even that one person, it didn't work. Okay, so in 1998, what do we call him now? Not Brenda, not Bruce, but what happened is that we discovered that he stood up and he said he just blew the cover of this whole thing was a hoax, and his name was now David. Brenda had become David. And he was not only a man, but he was married to a woman and he had adopted 3 stepchildren, and he worked as a janitor in a slaughterhouse.
Right.
So that was David Reamer, and people can go onto YouTube and hear him being interviewed about his experience of what it was like to be told for 14 years of his life that he's a girl, and to never, ever, ever feel that was his truth. And what happened is that during all those years, he was not happy with his dresses and with his dolls. He wanted to go play with his brother's toys. He wanted to pee standing up. He wanted to, he was rough. He was so boyish and aggressive that kids called him cave woman. Okay, they made fun of him because the way that he walked and his gestures and his interests were all so masculine. And he was a miserable child, and the family was miserable. And on top of everything, when the family was going back for those yearly visits to Johns Hopkins with Dr. Money was sexually abusing those twins.
Okay, how?
He was forcing them to undress and to mimic sexual intercourse. And he would say, this is what men and women do together. And he would, humiliate them and show them pictures. And the point came, why did they stop going down to Johns Hopkins? The boys refused to go. They refused to go back to see Dr. Money, and the parents couldn't understand why.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by the craziness of the world around you?
So, man, I don't know where to start from. This is a very, very sad story. Very sad. And this is just one of the few. I remember watching a video maybe like a year ago, of a bunch of people who came out and they had been silenced by the press. These were people who the US government had given support to go through with a transition, right? To transition from male to female. And they went through that process and they came back and said it did not fix the problem. And so what you will realize is that a lot of people think that what is being offered now is the solution. that, okay, I'm struggling either sexually or with my identity. And what the world is offering, or what some of these renowned scientists are offering, is, oh, okay, we can just change it to what you feel like, or we can just accept you the way you are, or, different things like that. And the truth is, in those situations, it gets worse. We said LGBTQIA because we've not made the distinctions yet. We're just talking about the entire community, and the fact that this at the core has to do with what sex you are assigned biologically, and whether that sex that you are assigned biologically differs from what you feel like. That's where we have things like cisgender, transgender, right? Cis means, oh, I was born as a man and I feel like no problem. That's cisgender. That's how it's defined. Transgender would be, I am born as a man or a woman, right? But I'm feeling like the opposite sex. And so I'm going to align or accept that feeling is truth, regardless of what my body is saying. And that's just one aspect. We're gonna see if we can finish the story, but it's a sad story. He kills himself. In fact, his brother kills himself through a drug overdose. But this guy, after everything that he experienced, after they messed his life up, the solution is never in changing. And you see a lot of people come out and tell you, and those are the ones that get the publicity. The hundreds and hundreds of people who have done this, what they'll call gender affirming care, and transitioned to whatever they want to, they are still depressed. Like, the problem is not the action itself or the feeling itself. It's something deeper. And I think that's something we need to realize, that and this is me going ahead of myself, when God presents the gospel in itself is not trying to fix someone who is gay and make them straight. That's not the goal of the gospel. The gospel is not supposed to come and, just eradicate the feelings or the temptations that you might have to desire people of the same sex as sexual partners. That's not necessarily what the gospel is coming to do. The gospel at its core is coming to save you from this body of sin, this body that is going to waste away and die, and give you the promise of a new body when Christ returns that would not need to deal with those issues. And so I think what we've sold to a lot of people is, someone is having same-sex attraction challenges or temptations. We are quick to just see them as other. And this is something God has to work on our hearts about. Once you see someone who is openly saying that, hey, I struggle with this, our response, if they come to you and they're open, your response should not be to be like, are you serious? How can you like man? How can you like woman? No. Because they are struggling in that way. If we check your life, apart from the one that you, by the grace and by the power of the Spirit of God, mortified and gotten help with, you are still as guilty as that person. So, in fact, some of you are not just guilty, you've gone all the way. So someone is still struggling with the idea, like they don't know how to control them, other men like them, and they've not acted on it. But you have, had, let's say, sex with people of the opposite sex, but again, outside of marriage. Guess what? Who is guilty? Do you understand? And it's just the way we've put a premium or put an idea that, oh, this is worse than the others. Whereas in God's sight, it is the assumption or the acceptance of an identity God did not give to you, or the acting upon of feelings that are temptations, that is the problem. And this is where we need to reorient our minds, because a lot of us we are part of the problem. We are not open enough to say, hey, you are as sinful as I am. We are all sinners that God had to send Jesus to die for. So you are lying, you are stealing. Hey, in God's sight, still needs blood to be shed, right? You have an attraction for this. I have an attraction for this. If we act on it, we are as equally guilty as anyone. And that's so it is worrisome and freeing at the same time. Worrisome in the sense that, hey, oh wretched man that we are, like we have a problem that God needs to help us with. But then it's also freeing, realizing, hey, okay, if you're here and you are having a struggle, you've had struggles at some point where you're just not sure, like because of certain things, and you will find out that many of these things, a lot of the feelings that people have are not just from birth. If you interrogate some of these people who are open to talk to you about it, most of those that have opened up to me and told me about same-sex attraction, I've never told anyone else. It's just me and that person, because that's the confidentiality agreement we have. But not without fail. Not without fail. Every one of them has had an experience of sexual abuse. And it got me thinking, this is not by birth. This didn't just happen. They were exposed to something that they were not ready for, they were not supposed to experience outside of the context of what God has created or put in plan. And that messes up with how they think, especially from that age. Like, how do you handle those things? And so a lot of feelings of, am I worth anything, leads to a lot of other feelings that make you doubt the natural order of things. And it's painful, but hey, we must hold on to the truth, which is, okay, you've been through that. The blood of Jesus is strong enough and potent enough to redeem you. This is not the end of you. This struggle will not be forever, and God can heal you. Okay, this is so important. It's something we need to embrace as believers, because maybe you've not just met anyone that is struggling in this way, and so you are desensitized or disconnected from it. I'm begging you, don't be. This is worth taking the time to learn about, to pay attention to equip yourself with knowledge about. Like, I didn't care about this thing before. I didn't cis, trans, all of that. I was just like, oh, Michelle, this world is in trouble. That's how I was before, until someone very close to me was like, this is it though. This is what I'm experiencing. I'm like, all of a sudden, my interest came alive. I said, I must understand this thing, and I must be a proponent for the truth. It's my challenge to everyone. I'm challenging everyone here. Don't just sit down on the sidelines and say, this world is going to be burnt by fire and brimstone, and not actually say, hey, I want to be educated. I want to be a good source of truth. I will speak the language that they understand, because, I mean, the indoctrination is now formalized. So I will speak that same language that they use and bring them into Christ with that same language, and help them understand, hey, I'm not separate. Like, Jesus came into the world where sinners are to die for sinners. That's the mindset we should have, that we've been redeemed, we've been saved, and there's nothing anyone can do that is beyond saving. There's nothing anyone can think that is beyond saving. And it's so important to have this mindset. Very, very important. Very, very important. We've titled this month Pride and Prejudice intentionally, because those of you who have read Shakespeare and the book, the original book, which was a classic, we are hinting at the fact that this is historic, is a historical idea that is not just new. Okay. And then we're also talking about, in a sense, how many of us have a way we treat people of that community without knowing. We are part of the problem, because we are kind of creating a category and a box that makes them other. Are we getting what I'm saying? I think it was my pastor that said that being homophobic is actually a sin. If you are homophobic, which means if you are visibly hateful to people for any reason, especially when they are clearly struggling, or maybe they're not even struggling, maybe they've gone through the whole process and they've accepted it. Your position is not to bring condemnation. I mean, John 3:17 says, God sent him, Jesus Christ, not to condemn the world, but by him save the world. Jesus came for not for condemnation, but for salvation. That's how we should approach things. And you cannot really help people without first understanding. You must have a deep understanding. Okay. So I just wanted to say all of that before we lose the time. I want us to go back and watch how that video ends and maybe take a few comments on this. We'll continue next
Reimer,
week as
what
well.
happened?
So
David
hit play.
Reimer committed suicide eventually, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's the denouement of that particularly tragic case.
And his twin.
So not only was this a failure, it was a. And go ahead.
Oh no, it was a disaster, terrible disaster. He committed suicide, and his twin brother died of an opiate overdose before him. His twin died first. The entire family was, what kind of words? Traumatized. It's not enough. Trauma is not enough to describe what that family went through.
My parents didn't know a lot that was going on. And if they would have known, it never would have happened. By me not saying anything, the medical community was under the impression that my case was a success story. And I was shocked when I heard that people thought that my case was a success story.
So what we should point out here is that this experiment couldn't possibly have gone more cataclysmically wrong than it did. Right? Not only was what Money was saying was not true in the technical scientific sense, it was an anti-truth, and he falsified the data, and it culminated in the death of two people, the demolition of a family, and the perversion of an entire culture. That's John Money's legacy. And
he never publicly acknowledged it. He never publicly acknowledged that the twins had, that one of the, I don't know what John Money died, I think in 2006, and I think he had dementia. But when the book came out, and when John Colapinto's book came out that just like exposed this whole calamity, there was nothing from John Money. He was still alive. He could have made a statement. Nothing. I'm just saying that that's just another, indication of what the immorality of this person, and the lack of acknowledgement, of what they're guilty of doing. I mean, I guess it's too much to expect.
So there you have it, folks. That's just one of many videos that just reveal. Thankfully, there are people on this side speaking out and saying, hey, there is a new culture that is being ingrained. How many of us have been on, any social media platform, and you've seen fellow Nigerians? Let me just speak to Nigerians. You've seen fellow Nigerians who are openly affirming the rainbow community, in quotes. Like, you see it on their bio. It's just there. And you may think it's subtle. You may think it's just like, oh, okay, but it's, hey, it's spreading. It's spreading. One of my friends, we went to school together, and I knew that back then I couldn't understand it because I was young. This was GSS 2 or so. She was popular, the child of a very popular musician back then that used to ride bikes. If you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. Used to ride bikes, had big bikes, and she had a daughter. And that daughter went to school with me, and I knew that she was just different, like the way she did and behaved. I knew that she had developed very quickly. You know what I mean by developed very quickly? She was young, but she already had features of like an older woman. And one thing that I noticed was she was acting very strange against guys. She was not the kind of person. She was getting male attention, but she was not pushing it away for the reason that that people thought, oh, she's just being a good girl. She didn't see them as attractive. She didn't care. That was really what it was. And back then I could see signs of that. I mean, even at GSS, just to tell you like the level of corruption that back then. And I just knew that, wow, something is off with this lady. But I couldn't really put a finger to it. Many years go by, and I'm just on Instagram, and I just see her name Like, oh, and I go there and all of a sudden she's just a different person entirely. She describes herself as queer, puts different pronouns and no the pronouns that you've never heard before. Something I forgot it, whether it was Zar or Zir. I was at first I didn't know what that was. I googled it. I said, "Oh, those are pronouns." So he, she, they, them is not enough anymore. Now we have zim. We have, huh, I was just concerned, and then I had to stop following because I had been following, and it just occurred to me that this thing had changed. Like this was not because at a point I remember this was still long after I'd grown up, and I was like, oh, she's in like in like doing well and everything. But it was almost like a year went by, and the next time I came to her profile, she's just something else. She has like, and you know what this is? Like it opens the door when you start identifying as queer or transgender or something like that. You notice that it just opens up a new realm. Like you just notice they open themselves up to things that are occultic. It's not a coincidence. They have like multiple piercings. I'm not talking of regular piercings. You can have like two, three, four. That's fine. If you have five, I will ask you like what's going on, but I can still manage that. But when you have piercings everywhere, your nose is pierced everywhere. You have this horn kind of piercing on your nose. I know something's off. This is crazy. And why is it always them? Why is it always? Do you understand what I'm saying? This thing comes with demonic oppression. I'm not joking. The moment you open the door to it, it's almost like what Paul says in Romans 1. When they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, neither were they thankful. So what did God do? He said, okay, you people don't want to acknowledge that I'm God, that I'm the creator of the world, that I've said man and man, woman and woman, man and woman, but you have gone ahead to say is man and man, and you said woman and woman. Okay, what does God do? Romans chapter 1 from verse 18. Read everything from Romans 1:18 to the end. You just realize that everything we are discussing today has been happening back then. And what did God do? God gave them up to their desires. That's the worst judgment God can give. When he just lets you go. Okay? This is the life you want. You're not going to fight this thing anymore. Take it. And so, guess what that take it means? It's not fall under the anointing. All right. This is gather all the vices that come with opening yourself up to this particular way of life. When you choose to do things yourself rather than God, you have to understand that we all have the same call to submit to the authority of Jesus. Everyone. So, regardless of what you are struggling with, wherever you are, you must bow the knee. Do you understand? Like that's the call. I don't care what you are struggling with, whether it is kleptomania, you like to steal, you like to lie, like you lie without knowing or thinking. Whether it is you just like women, you just like sex, you cannot help yourself. Whatever it is, whoever it is here, if that you are in that category, it's the same call. We're not different. We're not unique. It's the same call to repentance, to turn away from that lifestyle and to say, God, I need your help. God, I need your help. Submitting to the will of God, just submitting in the fear of the Lord. That's what we are supposed to do. So it's not like one person has it easier than the other. And if you feel like you have it easier, maybe you just not recognize the demons that are after you. They're in different shapes and sizes. Some of you is pride. Like that was one thing God was constantly hammering on me, that don't think you are okay. Like because at a point my focus was on defeating a particular sin that I noticed was coming, very, very close to my life. Always just, that was an area of struggle for me. And he just kept letting me know that you are focusing on this thing, but there are other things that you should be putting to death. And it just occurred to me that we can be so blindsided. We're not seeing all the other things. We find it easy to find the faults in other people. We are trained to find faults. We gossip about other people. Say, do you know what this person did? I can't believe it. Look at what's happening in the church. And you go ahead and gossip. But if God reveals the problems in your life, what happens when nobody is there? That's when you realize we are the same. Oh, we need the same grace of God. We need the same power of God, the Spirit of God. So I think this may not have been specific to to some questions that some of us have had, but I think it's still the same thing. It's like, hey, this is a real struggle you have. We acknowledge it. How many of us are even honest enough that just so that everybody knows that this is not crazy. Like it's not so far away. If there's anyone here and you're honest enough to say at some point in your life you had a slight confusion about your gender, or you had a slight confusion about your, like, be a guy or girl, maybe at a point you were growing up as a lady, you were playing with boys, and so you were not sure. Hi. You were not sure, right? How many of us? Okay, I'm seeing Vicky's hand up. Thank you for being honest. I don't know if it's from the last time. Beautiful. So, like, guess what?
No,
Oh, sorry. Okay, but Toyas is raising her
okay.
hand up.
Sorry, can I just comment on why I raised my hand?
Okay, yes, please. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, mine was not gender per se. Mine was more of like sexuality. Like, do I like
Hmm,
men? Do I like women? At some
okay.
point, I hated men.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just to be very honest, like even when I would watch porn that time, I couldn't stand like heterosexual pornography. Like if I wanted to watch pornography, it was lesbian pornography.
Hmm.
But thank God for God.
Hmm. So I thank you for being vulnerable. Like, because people don't like to talk about these things, but you think it's just far away. It's very many times it's just as this is real. It's not something distant. That's what I'm trying to let you know. Toyas, did you want to say anything about it, or you just want to affirm what?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna even type, but I was like, I feel like for me personally, if I were in the wrong community, I think I would have been part of them because growing up, because of how my physical body is, like most people always say like I look like a guy and everything. So I felt like that's how I should be. So like if maybe obviously Nigeria doesn't have friends that not now, but like before they did not. So obviously I never thought that I could change who I was because I thought okay, if I look like a guy, there's really nothing I can do. But like I just believe that if I were in the wrong community and like people told me that I look like a guy and people are friendly like, oh you look like a guy, you should be a guy. I think that I would have because at the time I started just like a young boy just to affirm what people said. But like I think that I've been part and I genuinely also did not like men just because of I just feel like I don't know, men were horrible people because of how I saw them growing up. So in my mind, men are just bad people, and like I didn't want to have anything to do with them. And people tell me that I look like a guy. So okay, I just believe it because I was in a community that did not affirm that idea. That's why I was safe. But if I grew up in America, I genuinely believe I'd have been one of them if they were to go who doesn't. So it's just does this for me.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing. And I'm just loving the vulnerability. I wish we led with this so that some people here might just feel like you're going through something alone, or you just like no one can understand you. I'm telling you, like, we all have, like, the Bible is very, very honest when it says we've all stumbled at some point, and he talks about how there are weights and there are sins that so easily beset. Don't think he doesn't know what he's saying when he says that, right? If Ed, you want to say something, you're already out of time, but we'll make sure it's just brief comments from everyone that wants to speak.
Yeah. So not so much me struggle. I just want to offer a general thought, which I think correlates. Maybe you mentioned this at some point, P, but I've heard a few psychologists, both Christian and non-Christian, say that one of the reasons why this like gender confusion has been coming up is also due to increased use of pornography.
Absolutely.
In fact, I heard a psychologist say that one of the reasons why lesbianism has been rampant is because women are becoming more hooked on porn. That it's making them actually be open to like lesbianism and homosexuality. So I think that's something as I feel correlates to the whole like LGBTQ thing.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a great contribution.
Victoria, is the network hanging or is
Okay,
it
I
me?
thought it was my internet.
I thought it was just me.
Same
That's what.
here.
All of us were thinking it's us.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I
say,
think you try to join back. Maybe like a call came in or something happened. But I mean, yeah. Um, so just like what P was saying, right? I think what like out of this entire conversation, what really stood out for me in the first two things is that first of all, you shouldn't hate people that no, first of all, like it's the root of these issues, right?
Hello, sorry. I think
Okay.
the devil doesn't want me to talk. I'm back.
Sorry.
My phone died when I was in the heat of it. Whoever it is that caused it, please
I think
repent.
it's me.
All right.
As I raised
Okay,
up my
I'm
hand,
back.
your phone died.
I want to say it again. Again. I don't know. Sorry, was anyone talking before I came back?
Vicky was
Okay.
I
speaking.
wanted to like recap what you were saying, but you're back now.
Okay. Please, I'm begging. I'm begging. See, this is one area. My friend here, he has been open about it. We this was something that we were very, very, very accountable to each other with on this subject because see, like it, whether you like it or not, how do I put this? What you feed on will show up. There's no is the concept of sowing and reaping. You may think you're getting away with it now. That it's just I just watch this and it's okay. Oh, I'm not addicted to it. Don't fall for that trap. The Bible says, cut off, put off everything that is fleshly in you, mortify the deeds of the body. And one of the things listed there is porneia. That's the Greek word for fornication, adultery, uncleanness, lasciviousness, every form of sexual perversion that is not sex between married people. Don't do it. Don't engage in it. It might be difficult. It might be hard. You might be addicted. You may be in those situations where your body is vibrating. Let me tell you something. In this battle, married, you have to even clarify. Thank you, Vicky. In this battle against sexual sin, let me tell you something that I've done. I have God knows the different skills that I've picked up to make sure that this thing doesn't stay in my life. Some of the things that I'm able to do now was because I was able to replace those habits with those things. So the being able to say, okay, you know what, this is my trigger. Because it's a trigger and it's not bad in itself, I'm going to still cut it off because it will lead to that. Times that I'll just go running for no reason. Why am I running? I'm running. I don't know. I'm running. The Bible says, flee from all appearances of evil. I will flee. I will actively do it. I don't care. I will take the word literally. Some of you need to. Some of you are very comfortable. You know that, hey, this thing, this guy, or if I text him now, he's coming to my house. All you need to do is to text, and you are still flirting with the idea that it's okay, I won't call him, I'm strong. You are a liar. You're not strong. Let country hit you. You know you're not strong. I'm begging you guys. This thing is, it may seem like I'm joking, but I'm serious. Because as a pastor now, I'm in a position where I can, it's a weird position where I can give counsel. And it's just like, oh my God. I can't, I'll just keep it coded like that. Let me just summarize it this way. Things are happening, and most of the time it's because they did not deal with it before marriage. They did not deal with it. And this is a very important thing. I know I'm taking extra time, but please, before I'll even let you just say something, but this one, I want to beg you. This is very important. For some of you, you're not even actively consuming pornography, right? What I mean by that is you're not going to the websites. You're not going to those popular websites where people get pornography, but everything else, you are flirting with it. Why are you deceiving yourself? Let's be honest. Just because they did not brand it with X or something on the website does not make it not pornography or pornography content. Do you understand? Some people, your Instagram can be a source of pornography. Your Twitter can be a source of pornography. The series that you love so much can be a source, and you know it is changing you, but you don't realize it. So, guys, please, it is a war. And I think now it's making sense when you see some of these legalistic creatures say, don't subscribe to this, to Netflix, don't do this, don't do that. I know some of them may be extreme, but you know where you are. Let God talk to you and just be honest. Like, there's some things you will just not do. My pastor always says, there are some movies that are rated 120. You will never be too old to watch it. You will never be old to watch it. Guys, let us be a people that God can trust, that God can bank on. I've fought though. I'm still fighting. Do you understand? It doesn't end. I was telling a brother of mine, like, we're just reliving like how much God has done in our lives, how we've come out of that life. And he was like, we are free. I said, don't say that though. I said, don't say we are free. We're not free anything. The moment you start thinking you are free, what does the Bible say? Let he that stands take heed lest he fall. I'm still a fighter. I'm wearing my gloves. I'm practicing. It doesn't end. Are you listening to me? I'm begging you. And, thankfully, we have honest people here. It's not only guys that are struggling with this thing, no. It's everybody. It's even worse now. Because I'll stop here. I will just keep going if I'm not careful. But please, this is a plea. I'm begging you guys. Please start removing those things. Be honest with yourself. If there is something that you are actually struggling with that is sin, I've said it before, come out about it. Talk to someone about it. That's the first way to drop the burden. Like PE or whoever you trust here, I'm done with this thing. This is something I used to do, and I'm telling you openly, I'm fighting this. And let's create systems that will help you defeat it. I've heard so many stories. All these things you see on Instagram, on Twitter, all this news you hear about, this family, this happened, this person cheated. It did not just start. Do you think anybody goes into marriage saying, I want to cheat? And then imagine if you've now struggled with it. There's a lot more work you must do in marriage. There's a lot more work you must do. And if marriage is not even in the picture for you, this is not even about making your spouse happy or anything. This is at the core a salvation issue. I've said this before. The true mark of salvation is the fruit that follows from it. There are some things you are still holding on to. You are still trying to be strong. You're still trying to say, God, I can figure this out. I'll be okay. I love you, but this one, I'm so close to this person. Break it. Let God know that you care about him more than anything. Because that's what matters. That's what matters. And there is joy at the end of it. Like, there's no other better way to live than to live free. Like, you live free, you know that you can leave your phone anywhere. You're not doing anything crazy. You know that you are light. It's beautiful. Praise God. I'm going to shut up now. Treasure, you're the last person to speak, and I'll let you guys go.
Yeah, so just as our pastor has already mentioned, the problem is there are a couple of times I've heard people say, like when someone gets married, like it becomes, at least you have your wife. That is a bloody, as far as I'm concerned, it's a bloody lie. Yep. Someone who is indisciplined is indisciplined. Marriage will not hide that for you. And the thing about sin, especially sexual sin, is it will blow up. It would definitely blow up. Right. And that's why you see like some people, I wouldn't like to mention names, but there was one that even happened after the man had died, and we all saw him as a foundation of the faith for a lot of us. And eventually, like it got to the point where a lot of people actually questioned his whole ministry, and some people even just turned away entirely because of those kind of character flaws. It would blow up. It's not